Hey guys, it's Mike. I am making another quick video. Well, we'll hope it's quick. To walk you guys through some of the options inside of Fantasy Grounds that might help and make your lives a little easier. Let's just jump right into it. So some of these things I promised you guys, some of them I just thought you might enjoy seeing. We'll see how far I get. Maybe I'll bust it into two videos. When you first log in, you see my message of the day. It's got some information you might be interested in about what's going on in game. It's got a rule that usually I had to look up during the week, so I'm sharing with you. You can just shut that down if you don't want to look at it. When you first log in, you'll see this campaign setup button. This helps you go out and load all the different books and that sort of thing that you really need to play the game. But once you've done all of that, you don't really have to show this anymore. You can always get back to what's in here if you need to. So save yourself time once you've got all the modules loaded up, and click this little button that says show on load to turn it off, and then you won't see it anymore. Again, if you really had to get back to it, if you go up here to the top right hand corner, hit the little gear to options, everything that you were prompted to do in there is available through here. So I can get you back to stuff if you need to, but don't worry about that for now. While I have this open, I'll show you that here in options are all the options that I have set. You're welcome to look at to see how I've got the game configured. There are 4 that are available for you to change. One is whether you hear a little bell when it's your turn. Another is whether you can manually enter dice. Leave that off. It just slows down the game because we're not doing it that way. Target remove on miss. If you've targeted something and you tried to hit it and you miss, do you want it to clear the target, or do you want it to keep it targeted? I've got it defaulting to multi here, which means if you're casting something that has multiple targets and you miss, then it'll clear the targets. You can set it however you want to. And then auto center map. Basically, when your turn comes up, do you want the map to put your token in the middle of the screen, or do you want to keep it wherever you had it? Seems to me that it's useful to auto-center it, but that's up to you. There's other stuff in here. You can go look at what languages are set up and see exactly how to spell them, because remember, that's important. You can see what currencies we use and what they weigh. You can see whatever background decal I'm using, but right now there's not one set in this sort of sandbox that I use for this. And if you missed the message of the day, you can come out here and pop it open again. All right. The character selection screen will have either the characters that you have claimed in it or characters that no one has claimed. Since this is the DM's user account, you'll see that this has got the NPC, TH, that we hang out with, and then Diggy, who I'm going to play for the purposes of this today. So, again, I am logged in as a player. I don't know if I said that or not, but everything you're seeing here is the player view, not the Dungeon Master's view. So there's nothing on this screen that's secret or that wouldn't be available to you. You'll notice as soon as I logged in, it popped up my character sheet. I'm going to shut that for now. And remember that this weird thing is popping up. It's related to the calendar and the timer that I use. You just need to get rid of it by right-click on it, select Unlock Position, then go to Close or Lock, and then go to Close Window, and it's gone. A couple of more things to show you. The toolbar over here on the right that's got all the buttons you can hit to open up and see items and NPCs and that sort of thing. This button down in the bottom right hand corner will shrink that down if you don't like how much space it was taking up, and if you hit it again, it'll shrink it even further. That frees up some screen real estate for you to put other things on if you want to do that. If you can't remember what the buttons are, you still only have to just put your mouse over them and it'll remind you. So for me, I think this is a pretty good way to roll, especially since you probably aren't hitting these buttons very often. But I'll grow it back out here so that you guys can see them all for the purposes of this video anyway. Over here in the chat box are all the modules and extensions and macro magic that I use to make the game a little smoother. These are things that I have added, the community writes, and I have added to the game. They're not part of the core software, but they make things a lot better. If you're curious, you can go through, and some of them actually kind of explain what they do. I guess you'd have to be pretty bored to do that, but go for it if you want to. The dice tower, and really all of these windows will more or less try to remember where you put them the last time that you played. But if for some reason things have moved around and you want them to go somewhere else, you just right click on basically anything in Fantasy Grounds, say unlock, then you can move it around, put it wherever you want it. I kind of think the dice tower goes on top of the dice. Then you right click it again and say lock position, and it'll stay there. I can't move it now even though I'm trying to. It's the same thing with all the other buttons. Let's say I open up the items, and I really want the items to always appear up here in the top right hand. Put them where I want them, close it, and then the next time I hit items, it's going to open up there. So you can start to kind of control where your windows appear, and that makes using Fantasy Grounds a lot smoother in my opinion. Another thing, if you go over to the chat box and just type in a slash, that's a /, and hit enter, you see all the slash commands that you might use. This allows you to whisper to each other or whisper to me or to roll dice and that sort of thing. Probably the most, you can put in that you're AFK. But probably the most useful thing out here for you guys is the scale UI function. So that's UI as in user interface. You'll see that it accepts a value between 50 and 200. It'll change the font size on the screen. So if I say scale UI 120, it'll set it to 120%, and you see everything just got a lot bigger, makes it a lot easier to read, but it also chews up some of your screen real estate. So I'm going to set it back. The magic place for me is somewhere between 70 and 80. I'll set it to 80 here, scale UI 80, and you see it goes back. When you start monkeying with that, it may move your windows around, so I would come up with a UI scale that you like before you start really trying to meticulously place your windows around. And I'll point out that the chat box is one of those things that can be moved as well. So if for some reason, you feel like the chat box, sorry, I'm doing a really poor job of grabbing this, ought to be somewhere else on the screen, you can do that. You can unlock it and widen it, shrink it, make it go all the way to the top of the screen if you want to, whatever you want. If you are trying to mess with it, it's a little bit easier if you get the GM to clear all this stuff out of the chat, because then you're not grabbing words like I just did and repeating them in character. So, little button down here at the bottom of the chat box allows you to choose any of the languages you speak, and then you can speak in that language, and only other characters and the DM who speak that language will understand it. So if I want to say I'm speaking in Common, and I say hello, only people who speak Common are going to see the translation of hello. Everybody else is just going to see this little funny thing. If you don't want to have any particular language, then just go up there and set it to blank. If you have multiple characters, you can also set which character you're speaking as down here, but we don't do a lot of that, so that probably won't come up too much. So once you've done all of that, how do what are the first things you should do when you log in? I would hit the combat tracker up here in the top right. You notice it's the very first button, which is a pretty good indicator. It's kind of important. The party sheet is the second button. You might find it useful. It shows who you're hanging out with, and some at a glance important stuff about them, their ability scores, their ACs, their saves. You can go down and see sort of their passive and knowledge and social and physical skills. This isn't every skill in the game, but it is a lot of them and the ones that are most often used. So if you want to see, hey, is anybody any good at dungeoneering? You'll find that only Craze and Adeline are even trained in it. Also gives you a list of what languages they speak, but we have so many languages in my game that the list is going to be longer than you can really see. Here you can see everybody's inventory, so this is everything that everyone is carrying. And then of course this is where we go to split up loot and that sort of thing. And then here is where you can arrange your party order when you guys are out marching and I want to know who's in the front and who's in the back and all that kind of stuff. We can have all that listed here. Truth is, I can hide a lot of the stuff in here. If you guys were playing a super secretive game and you really didn't want anybody to know how charismatic you were or whether you were trained in diplomacy or whatever, I can hide all of this, but I think for our group it's kind of fun to see all of it. You can also see sort of special senses. You see that TH here is the only one in the group who has dark vision. So the party sheet's kind of handy. Again, pick a spot that you like it, close it, and then the next time you open, it'll show up in the same spot. The calendar button here is pretty handy. I think this is kind of a neat tool, at least it is for me. It shows you the moon phase, it shows you the date, shows you the time. The moon phase is actually tied to some of the items in my game and to some of the clerical resting and that sort of thing, so it's worth keeping up with. You can go out here and see that today is Eliasis 24th. Go down here and find Eliasis 24th and you see that it's lit up. And anything with a red dot has some sort of commentary on it. So if we go back, say, to the 19th and double click that, we can see what happened. That's when we played game 17. And here's some brief information about it. And then this little link will open up the notes that John wrote recapping the game, if that's something you want to go back and look at. So that's how sort of hyper organized we are. You can hit all logs and see everything for every date that's out there. And then the time moves by a DM control that I've got that moves time forward. So it's tied to a thing that like keeps up with whether a disease that you have needs a save or should be triggered or whatever. So it's all actually pretty cool if you're into keeping up with all that detail. And that's, in my opinion, why we're playing Pathfinder, is because it does have all of that detail. Let's look at the little color button here real quickly. You'll see that my dice down here are yellow. This controls what color those dice are. You'll also notice that next to Diggy's picture up here in the top left is a little yellow dot. Those all match to show that I'm the one using yellow stuff. If everybody will pick and use a different color, it actually comes in kind of handy. And I'll get into more detail on this in the future, but let me just show you a couple of things real quick. It has some in-combat impact on how things look on the screen. So let me remind you of a cool trick. If you go up here to your picture in the top left and double click it, it'll open up your character sheet. And then if you double click your token on your character sheet, that will open up any map that is associated with your token in the combat tracker. So even if you guys are on the different, say, floors of the haunted house, you can get to your character on the second floor, and San can get to her character on the third floor just by double clicking their icon on their sheet. So here's what I wanted to show you. There's a lot I'm going to show you about things you can do in combat, but a couple of things that are really interesting, or at least maybe helpful, is I'm always telling you, make sure you have your token selected before you do certain things. Remember, my dice are yellow. When I click on my token, it gets a little yellow ring around it that matches there. So I know I have myself selected because of the yellow ring. All right, matches my dice, so I must have myself selected. When I don't have myself selected, there's no yellow ring there. All right. Another thing you'll find useful, right click anywhere on the map and go to this little pointer. And if you're trying to figure out, for instance, if the bad guys are in your area, let's say I'm casting a Burning Hands, I think is like a 30-foot cone. That may be wrong, but so I right-clicked, I'll do it again. Pointers, I select Draw Cone, and now I just hold my left mouse button anywhere, and I can start dragging this out, all right? So there's a 30-foot cone, and then if I go back and grab the starting point of it, I don't know if cones start on the corner of your square or in the center. Different effects are different, but you see how it clicks to those places. So I can click it to the corner of the square, the side of the square, the center of the square, and then I can grab it and rotate it around to see who's in what area. Now, this isn't meant to be permanent on the map. We'll deal with that a different way, but it's a great way for you to see what enemies fall into what areas. And again, back to my original point, it matches the yellow color of your dice. If I was to go up here to the palette, the color palette in the top right-hand corner and click it, and let's say I want to change my dice color to this lovely fuchsia, and this button over here on the right determines whether the text inside of the dice is either white or black. So I've changed myself from yellow with black text to fuchsia with white text. And you'll notice now that the little pip on my icon in the top left is fuchsia. My area here is fuchsia. My dice are fuchsia. The ring around my character is fuchsia. And so when I want to get rid of this little area here, just right click, go to pointers and say remove pointers. Okay, and you can actually have multiple ones out there on the board at any given time, but you know, at some point clean it up. I feel like that's enough for one video. I don't want you guys to be listening to an hour of me rambling on. So that's just a first sort of introduction into things. We'll get into some of the other buttons and some that might be helpful in combat in the next video. I hope you guys found this useful, and I will see you later.